I always appreciate when we're able to bring back the issue of water. In our Energy 2020 that we laid down some years ago, we had a little chapter there on the energy-water nexus. And it was really the first time we'd had conversation about this. And the key, as you have mentioned, Dr. Birol, you can't produce energy without water, and you can't have water without energy. And so understanding that and how it all fits in is so key. So the fact that you have included it as well. I want to ask about a couple different policy initiatives that are coming our way in the very short term. The first one is this IMO 2020, the International Maritime Organization regulation that's going to go into effect literally overnight there, capping the amount of sulfur in the marine fuel. What's your best estimate in terms of the impact that this regulation is going to have on the middle distillate market? What are we going to see with regards to diesel fuel, jet fuel prices? Are we going to see a jump up with that? There hasn't been a lot of discussion about it, and it's one of these things where I'm afraid we're going to wake up on January 1st and people are going to be saying, what just happened there? And yet, theoretically, we've been planning for it for years now. But your observations, please.
Thank you very much. I would be happy to mention this, but also one point on the Arctic, I will come to that if you don't mind. For the, you are right, these regulations from the IMO are very serious, and there was in the beginning a bit of a type of panic in the oil industry. But what we are seeing now, we talk with all the oil industry around the world, the refineries are adjusting themselves to these regulations. There may be some temporary price spikes for diesel jet fuel prices, but we think that the market will adjust, and we don't expect those price spikes will be long-lasting and big. There will be some adjustment period, but refineries are now today being configured according to the IMO rules around the world, and the U.S. is one of the leaders.
So you don't think that it would potentially be necessary to have kind of a phase-in period just to avoid any potential for price spikes? It sounds like you think that we are preparing for this and will be ready.
Definitely, we are preparing around the world. There may be some price spikes, but it will be temporary and it will not be big. Okay. In terms of Arctic, I think you are completely right from your perspective. Russia is making substantial efforts in terms of the LNG from Yamal, but the volumes are not yet that big, but they are working on that. But in my view, this is a signal for the United States that if the U.S. wants to get the market share and to put the market share in its pocket already, should move rather fast in order to get that market share, because the volumes may not be very big today, but tomorrow it may be bigger and will be a much tougher competitor.
So you see that as an area of growth for Russia. Do you factor that in as you're looking then to where the demand for natural gas is coming from? Do you see the production in this very remote part of Russia is coming on in a significant way, or what does your analysis show you at this point?
Currently, Madam Chair, not big volumes, but I cannot exclude that it will grow in the future. My advice would be to take this challenge seriously, and the U.S. LNG should, I think, be ready to compete with the possible growth coming from Yamal LNG, which is small today, but may be bigger tomorrow. The issues that some of the senators mentioned today, the not having the enough licenses for the building pipeline capacity, I think those decision makers should see those facts and perhaps make their decisions accordingly.
I appreciate that. I thank you for your focus on nuclear and a recognition that when it comes to nuclear and leadership, the United States had a very, very, very key role, and that we are almost standing down on that. And I hesitate to use that terminology because it makes it sound pretty dismal. But to know that right now, 20% here in the United States come from nuclear, but we're headed down to 7%. Yes. And again, when we want to talk about ways that we can be meaningfully reducing our emissions in this country and around the world, in my view, nuclear energy is that source that we should be looking to and making those investments in an aggressive way towards the advanced technologies in dealing with our waste issues, but really being aggressive rather than kind of pulling back on that now. And so I'm more than a little bit concerned that we are placing less value on nuclear here. So I've been trying to take point on this and move us out. But when you look around the world, you mentioned that China is moving more aggressively with nuclear. What other nations are stepping up? I mean, there have been some very political reasons where countries have drawn back after the horrible incident in Japan, Fukushima, but we saw some of the European nations really pulling back. Do you see that turning at all, where there is now renewed interest in nuclear? Speak a little bit more to your long-term view.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Now, we see that not only in the US, but also in Europe, the share of nuclear will go down if there is no policy change. And there are two countries going in the other direction, China and Russia. China and Russia building nuclear power plants. And what will happen if the policies do not change? At least two things. One, the US and Europe will lose a major technological advantage because many countries around the world would like to import nuclear technology, and China, Russia, by learning by doing, they are bringing the cost of nuclear down, and therefore they will have more advantage compared to US or the European countries to sell their nuclear technology. So this is because cost is a major issue, and in the United States we have, or in Europe, we don't build any nuclear power plants, perhaps just a few, and we are even the opposite of learning by doing, forgetting by not doing. So we are forgetting how to do these technologies. Yeah. So therefore it is a bad news. The second one is, in my view, you rightly mentioned again, Madam Chair, the emissions. Nuclear is a technology which reduces the emissions very radical way, and in the absence of nuclear, the reaching our environmental goals will be much tougher. And when we look at today, we talk about the United States being also a successful country in terms of renewables, but the nuclear generate electricity as much as all the other renewable sources put together in the United States today. Losing this would be, in my view, not a very wise policy. So this will be another negative implication. And of course, I am only talking about here energy and environment. Not the US, but other countries being the leader in nuclear capacity may well have other implications beyond energy and environment.
So you had made the comment that most notably in places like Russia, certainly India, well, environmental concerns are important, that affordability, access to electricity, these are the things that are really driving as they're working to build out these countries here. Do you think we get to a point with nuclear where it is viewed as as not only the environmental choice, but from the perspective of the cost and a stability of cost, that we're going to see greater investments. I mean, obviously, China is taking that step, but in other countries as well. I just see the focus, the global focus on what we are dealing with our emissions, recognizing that we were, and noted in my opening comments, we were on a pretty good trend here in the United States with reducing our emissions, but we've bumped back up here. I want to think that that's just a temporary bump, and we're gonna work to keep reducing them. But is this global dialogue about how we reduce our emissions, will that begin to have an impact on some of the investment and policy decisions, or is it still always going to be about, what does it cost me to stay warm, to stay cool, to keep my lights on?
First of all, about nuclear, I think the challenge for current nuclear technology is the first down payment is very, very high cost, but the operation costs are very cheap. Since the big chunk of this new investment need to be done in the emerging countries, whose the financial means are rather limited, it may not be a mushrooming technology in those countries. Having said that, advanced nuclear technology, such as small modular reactors, can be a very good fit for those countries. I think in the United States and other parts of the world, there is a lot of work going there. And if we see the commercial success in the SMRs, it can be definitely one of the favorite options. Now, the investments today are going for renewables, but at the same time for oil, at the same time for gas and coal. It is very difficult to say that there is a clear winner today. But when we look at the last year, for example, more than 50% of the new power capacity came in the world was solar only. Solar was 50%, everything else put again another 50%, and the renewables are getting a lot of attraction from the investment community as well.
One last question, and it's something that nobody's really hit on today. In your outlook, you mentioned that the electricity sector, star of the show, experiencing its most dramatic transformation since its creation more than a century ago. A lot of focus and attention on that as well, and an acknowledgement that our electricity grid is increasingly becoming more digitalized, and this allows us to be clearly smarter, much more efficient, which again is important, and a more flexible grid. But it then presents issues that make us realize how vulnerable our grid can be to any level of cyber attack. Your thoughts on how we balance the real benefits of this digitization of our electric sector versus the vulnerabilities that are then created, and are there any good examples worldwide where some nations are really aggressively taking this on in a way that you see as making a difference? I know that here, this is an issue that we talk about in every single committee that I'm on, but it's almost like this is so big, we don't know how to start taking a bite at this elephant. And so looking to others who might be able to show some progress here would be interesting to learn from.
This is an extremely important point, Madam Chair. In the 70s, when the IEA was founded, oil security was a key issue. And it still is. There is no change there. But the electricity security is becoming a major issue as well, for two reasons. One, the share of solar and wind they are increasing in our electricity system. And if we do not take the necessary measures, in the absence of solar and wind, we may see blackouts. For example, we have seen one in Australia recently. The share of renewables was more than 50%. In a bad day, there was no electricity and blackout in a country like Australia. So this is one electricity security issue. The second one is the cyber security. And this is an area which needs the utmost attention of not the energy people, but also the security people, and the necessary measures and the backup technologies and backup the security measures need to be taken. An area that, again, we are working very hard with the regulators, system operators, and also security forces, so that we are prepared to cyber security attacks. To be very frank with you, we have 30 member countries, and if you ask me if any of those countries are fully equipped vis-a-vis the such cyber attacks, I would have hesitations to say yes to you for any country we have. It's a major issue, and we all know that without electricity, hospitals, lifts, nothing will work, and our system will be completely paralyzed as a result of that. So as such, we have, as IEA, in addition to oil security, are working now on the electricity security. It's a major issue for us too.
Good. Well, next year we'll anxiously await your report to see what progress you've made on that. It is certainly key. Senator Cortez Masto, did you have any other comments or questions that you wanted to add? I want to thank you, Dr. Birol. You have been, again, very informative. It's been a very important discussion. I always leave these hearings taking my notes with me and finding myself referring to them throughout the year. But you've given us some good reminders here when you start off with just the reminder that, you know, no country is an energy island. We sure got that. But a reminder, too, that the role that the United States is playing when it comes to oil and natural gas is not only important for us, it is important globally, it's important to our partners, to our allies, and we've got a lot of good news that is there. We've got some policy considerations that we need to address that relate to a limitation of our own capacity here, that we can address that and help ourselves and help others. I think that is significant. You know, we always ask, are there any, whether it's silver bullets or silver buckshot, as Senator King reminded us, but you've given us some specifics where the United States is leading. You mentioned the 45Q as a business model out there. You've clearly reminded us that if we want to truly work towards a diversified portfolio that helps us reduce our emissions, in addition to what we're doing with renewables, that nuclear, and particularly advanced nuclear, has got to be so much of our calculus here. And so we have no shortage of issues to deal with before the committee, but I think as we move forward and lay down our priorities here, what you've given us this morning and what the agency has provided us with just the background and the factual analysis is good, it's solid, and it allows us to be better informed as we move forward with our policies.